It's a real testament, from my opinion, to their writing skills, is their ability to kind of balance all of it. It's not a comedy, but there's some funny moments. It's not a rom-com, but it's a very romantic idea.
Hi, Kiefer. How are you?
Great. How are you?
I'm doing great. I don't even know where to start with Rabbit Hole. At the end of the first episode, my mind was blown. I love how it goes from espionage, corporate espionage, to just espionage. So what was it that called you to the role of a character like John Weir with so many secrets?
First of all, I love the genre. It's my favorite, and clearly I got a big dose of it with 24. But just as a kid growing up, those were the movies that I wanted to watch, and I got a call from John and Glenn, who were interested in developing a show that was kind of going to harken back to 3 Days of the Condor, Marathon Man, Parallax View, films like that. And those were the films that I really grew up on and that I fell in love with. And then they described this character. And I fell in love with a lot of the kind of tentpole ideas of who he was. This was a guy who was very brilliant, who had a great facility with numbers, and not to do math, but actually predict probabilities, and that he could use those probabilities to make decisions to get himself out of certain situations. And as much as that was his superhero strength, it was also his great weakness, because if he couldn't round a number up, it just created anxiety, and it just got worse and worse and worse, which is what we call the proverbial rabbit hole. So there was a character who had this great kind of strength, but also was very vulnerable if it didn't work out. And I thought the duality of that was something that I found fascinating. And then I was such a huge fan of John and Glenn, and they're such delicate writers. The nuances and the fact that they've woven comedy and a love story into what is a thriller that is, the stakes are life and death. I mean, so to balance all of those things together is pretty extraordinary. And so I was just really grateful that, they called me first, because whoever they called was going to do it. Yeah. And I was just like, whew, I got lucky there. Yeah.
I love, you brought up so many things that I love about the show, so I don't even know where to start with that. But the family relationships really lead to your character's vulnerability. Like, what's it like balancing his genius work life with what has been happening, with ex-wife and child, and then the flashbacks we get of his father?
Well, and this is what's interesting about the show, because I think we live more and more in a world where even what we see and what we hear is not necessarily true, because of our incredible ability at home to manipulate things. I mean, it's staggering. You've got kids at home, which is so cool, making albums, in their bedrooms, and 15 years ago, you had to go to a multi-million-dollar recording studio to be able to do that. So that's one of the pluses of kind of technology and where we've gone with that. One of the negatives is the manipulation of material, whether it be visual or audio or both. You can do in your kids' in the bedroom, at home. It doesn't require sophisticated equipment anymore. And so in that circumstance, he's created a world around him, John Weir, and this is something that we discover over the course of the entire season. And some of it is on purpose to deflect and confuse a potential adversary, and some of it's not. Some of it's really what it appears to be. And what's kind of fascinating is, as an audience person, is kind of trying to discern between the two. And that's, it's nice to be involved, for me at least, to be involved in a show like that, where I'm watching something and something's being required of me. So it's hopefully people will enjoy that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm also you mentioned the romance. I just have to say, what would you say to people who generally like romance? Do you think there's enough romance for Rabbit Hole to hook them?
Well, those are questions that someone's going to have to ask an audience, and I'd be interested to hear the answer to that.
As a Jane Austen fan, so far, I'm invested.
It's and that's romantic, Jane Austen. This is, I think, again, it's a real testament, from my opinion, to their writing skills, is their ability to kind of balance all of it. It's not a comedy, but there's some funny moments. It's not a rom-com, but it's a very romantic idea. Excuse me, and yet it still stayed true to its genre, which is that of a thriller. So, but it's again, I think it's incredibly well balanced, but. an audience will tell you the
We
answer.
will judge.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. You
Absolute
were fabulous
pleasure.
as always.
Cheers. Thank you.